Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Soul Adventure podcast from ECKANKAR. I'm Doug Kunin, and I'll be your host for this episode. And this is where we explore topics as diverse as past lives, dreams, soul travel, or maybe you've had an experience, perhaps a miraculous coincidence that makes you scratch your head and say, maybe there's more to life than what we see. And if you've ever had an interest in past lives, karma, and reincarnation, you're going to want to hear from our two guests, a mother and son duo, who have explored those topics through daily life experience. And this is something of a trending topic. There's a recent article from the Washington Post by Caitlin Gibson, and it's entitled, "The Children Who Remember Past Lives." And this is just a fascinating exploration of children, it's ages 2 to 6 mainly, who have said things about other individuals who lived before, who they identify with, and they actually remember historical and factual details that have been checked out by researchers. So there are scientific researchers who have looked into some of these stories, primarily from the University of Virginia, and there's just no way these children could have known some of these things that they said from their current life experience. Those are the facts. How we explain them is a different story. We all have our own experiences and understandings, and we invite you to come to your own conclusions. This article opened up almost 4,000 comments from people from all over. Clearly, people were interested. There are skeptics, agnostics, people who have had experiences, but mainly it opened up the door for people to say, I've had some unexplained experiences in my life or situations that there's just no way. How could that happen? A man who had rarely heard from his sister. She only called him on his birthday for 20 years. She lived on another continent. One day he had seizures, grand mal seizures, and he was out for like 6 minutes. He had to go to the hospital. Within the hour, his sister called saying, "I felt like I had to call you. Something was wrong, and I just had to call you."
Wow.
And he had just had this major experience with the seizures. And he said, "Look, I don't have any explanation. I don't believe in all this, but maybe we need to have the humility to accept that maybe there's more than what we know in our science and philosophies." And so ECKANKAR is a spiritual teaching that does say there's definitely more to life than what we see. And there are universal principles and laws of life that shape our lives and shape our destinies. We can actually actively take a part in that destiny. So we invite you on a journey to listen further. It won't be a visit to some remote or mysterious location because these things come up in the normal course of daily family living. So we have Crary and her son Cameron here with us today. Welcome, Crary and Cam.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Cam. Cam's 13 years old,
Yep.
likes baseball,
Yeah.
and loves life. So you both have had memories of past lives, and we want to start with you, Crary, because I understand you had some early age experiences with the possibility of past lives. So can you tell us your earliest awareness of a past life connection and how your understanding unfolded as you got older?
Yeah, so my earliest memory of a past life is when I was in preschool age. And I had kind of talked to my mom about some memories that I had with my best friend at the time, who, I met when I was 1, and we ran to each other and threw our arms around each other the moment we met, which is very odd for 1-year-olds because usually you don't have that kind of a connection with a single person. You just play with anybody or play simultaneously next to them. But whenever we were together, we were just attached to each other. So when I, was about 4 or 5 years old, I remember going into my Sunday school class and asking the teacher about past lives because...
Well, how would you even heard of that phrase?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I guess because when I would share like this love that I had for my friend, my mom would kind of be like, well, do you think you maybe had a past life with this person? And I could remember what she looked like.
from
in
a past
different
life?
body. Like I would describe her as like, she doesn't look like this. She looks different. Like she'd have, different skin color. And there's just differences about her features, but she still, to me, was my friend. Like, I still recognized her. It just was in a different body.
So let me ask you a question. So you mentioned running up to her and hugging her. Had you ever met her before?
I never met her. It was the first time I met her. I was 1 year old. So I don't actually remember that, obviously, but my mom reiterated that, like, this is how you met her the first time you ever met her. This is what you did. And my mom was very open to past lives. She would like share stories with me about, like, I remember this one story she had of someone recognizing a building and remembering that building as something different than what it was. Like, I think it sold shoes or something in the past. And the parent was like, no, like, that's not what this is. It tells this instead. No, I used to get my shoes from this place. And so sure enough, the parent went and researched it, and it was exactly that. It used to be years ago, like 50 years ago, they had sold whatever it was that the child remembered. And that stuck with me because I was like, oh, this feeling that I have for this friend, this knowingness that I have for her, it could be something from a past life. It's not necessarily from this lifetime. Like, it's real what I'm experiencing. And so I went to Sunday school and I was asking, about past lives. Like,
how old were you when you went
must have been 3 or 4 years old, probably 4 years old. And, I said, what about past lives? Like, what do you know about past lives? I just wanted to know more because of the experience I was having with this friend. And the preschool teacher or Sunday school teacher was, responded, well, there's no such thing as past lives. That's not in our teachings. Like, that's no such thing. Don't talk about that ever again. And I remember just breaking into tears because it was such a truth for me. I mean, I couldn't really explain it, but I was so little, but I also knew that it was truth for me. So I went to my mom after class and I told her I never want to go back to that Sunday school class and I want to know more about past lives. And, that was one of the things that instigated my mom, along with other things of her own needs, to finding a different spiritual path. And one day she came to me, it was years later. I mean, I was probably 8 at the time. And she said, would you like to come to a service at ECKANKAR? And I said, no, I'm good. And she goes, are you sure? I said, well, do they believe in past lives? And she goes, yeah, they do. I said, oh, okay, I'll go. And, being so young and knowing that that was like a truth for me was kind of a anchor to my searching. It was like one of these unknown questions that the world around me couldn't really explain. My mom was trying to find out more information to help explain it to me, but I just had questions and I wanted to know more.
Wow.
So that's
interesting.
Yeah.
So that was part of your journey. So when Cam was born, did you start to talk to him about past lives before some of the experiences that later came about? Or did he just start sharing in ways that gave you these past life clues?
Yeah, when Cameron was born, I don't remember if I was like, oh, you've had past lives. I don't remember if that was part of our conversation necessarily. But, I had other past life experiences from the time I was a kid to the time I became a mother that affirmed past lives were real for me.
Right.
However, if I had any questions about those, because most of those came from like a dream or, just a feeling that I had, nothing that I could prove to somebody. But when Cameron came along and he started sharing these experiences like randomly and out of the blue, that was like, for me, just the proof that I needed. It was like, I mean, I already full-heartedly believed in it, but it just really showed me, how does he know these things? Like, where are these things coming from,
Right. So let's hear about some of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's see. So when he was really little, we went to go pick out an ornament. Do you want to tell that story, Cameron?
Sure, I was like 3, right?
Yeah.
And we always go to pick out ornaments for Christmas. And I was like really young, right? And I just went up to one and I was like, ooh, I like this one. It's like, it's a football player. And I hadn't known what, like no one told me about football yet, right? And I was like, and then I told my mom, I was like, I like football. I'm really good at it.
Yeah, you're saying I'm really good at football at that point, at that age.
Yeah. And so And when he initially picked the ornament, I recognized, I'm like, okay, this is a football player. Why is he being drawn to this? Because we weren't a sports family. My husband does not watch football. Like, nobody around us watched football. And we weren't even a screen family at the time. Like, we didn't let him watch TV or movies. We were very crunchy.
I just remember walking up to it and I was like, I like this one. I remember football.
Yep. And so I asked him, I said, well, do you even know what this is? And he was like, yeah, it's a football player. I was like, well, how do you know that it's a football player? And you were like, because I play football. I play. I'm good at this.
Did you remember what position you played?
I just knew I played football.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for me, that was like, I paid attention to that. And it also affirmed for me, like, I had these inner experiences with Cam when I was pregnant with him.
Okay.
Some dreams that reminded me of my grandfather. And it also, like, he had a lot of traits and qualities that were very similar to him. However, like, I never told him that because the experiences I was having were for me and not necessarily for him. And I didn't want to shape anything about who he is and who he was. It's like, it doesn't really matter. In this lifetime, he's Cameron, and that's what matters. But
Right, because I was going to ask you, when he said that, did you just listen and that was it? Or did you...
yes.
How did you respond?
Well, I listened. I asked him, like, how do you know about that? And I was just so surprised because I didn't know how he would know about football, which I know is very strange in America. Like, but he had no influence of that around him. And so I feel like the one thing I did do is I called my mom and I said, Mom, listen to what Cameron picked for his ornament and listen, like, he says he plays football, so for me it was like he obviously played football in a past life, like he feels so strong about this. And he kind of didn't stop talking about it. It was also something he continued to say later on. And so my mom had just reminded me that my grandfather had played football for Harvard and was very much in love with football. And at one point, he had to leave Harvard early. He had like a scholarship and everything because of the Great Depression. He had to go home and help his father with their business. And so he never got to really fulfill that dream. And in that moment, it kind of gave me a nudge that maybe this might be a dream that he has in this lifetime that will need to be fulfilled. I don't know. So
I've seen him play football.
Yes, yeah. Which is partly due to that experience because he felt so strongly about playing football in this lifetime and really, really wanted to.
Wanted to, yeah.
Yeah.
But you didn't quite want me to.
I didn't because there's risks involved with concussions and things like that. However, I also knew that, we each have our own journeys and our own paths to take. And when we feel really strongly about something, it's my job to support him in fulfilling his dreams and obviously making smart decisions. But so I let him play and he loved it for a while. And then you decided to shift to a different sport.
That's great because, this is this lifetime and the past lives build a foundation of talents and skills, but we can always grow into new things. Mm-hmm. I sense that there are other clues going on here about your grandfather.
So, it's kind of cool because Cam would tell me a lot of things. He'd tell stories about like my other mother and father, or he would tell stories about, my other brother, and he would say things about them that, he doesn't have a brother in this lifetime. And I'm like, well, who are your other mother and father?
That's kind of shocking.
Yeah, it was shocking. He was very little, probably like 2 and 3 around that time that he would say those things. And I just listened to them and, I'd ask questions to just get more information. I never told him that he didn't have those. I just kind of would say, oh, tell me more about that. And then one day we were driving in the car. Cam, do you want to tell that story? Do you remember when we were driving in the car?
Yeah, I do. We were in the car, me and my mom, and I was like, I remember when I drove in the front seat and I was big and you were little and you rode in the back seat.
Yeah, and I was so surprised by this because, so I said to him, oh, well, like, was I big like you and you drove the car? Like, did I ride next to you?
Nope, I was driving and you were little.
And you were little and you rode in the back. And so another confirmation for me that he remembers me, and he was very specific that it was me, when I was little.
Okay.
Like, no, Mom, when you were little.
Right.
And so, you know, the only person I know who's translated or died, as, you know, we say, is my grandfather that I would have been driving with, you know, when I was a little kid. And so then Cameron asked me a question right after that about my grandfather. And I did not say anything about the thought that I was having.
Okay.
But Cam, what did you ask right after that?
I said, what was your grandfather's name?
Yeah, and so I told him, you know, oh, well, my grandfather was called Grandy, which was, and what did you say?
And I said, no, what's his real name? That's what you called him, but what's his actual name?
Yeah, and so then I told him, like, the first, the middle, and the last name of my grandfather's name.
And I was like, yeah, that one's my name. That's my name. Yeah. And I recognized it because I just remembered being called that name.
Amazing. Wow. How did you feel when you said that? Did you have any feelings about that, or did it seem
I was
totally
really
natural?
little.
Or
yeah,
what?
it was just natural. I was like 3 or
Yeah.
like 5, 6.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
When you're 5, everything is cool.
Yeah, well, anything is possible too, you know. And for him to say that, it just, you know, up until that point, like I said, I never shared how I was interpreting the experiences that he was sharing with me until he said that. And so once he shared that with me, then I said, hey, you know, it's really interesting. Like, you've talked about your other mother and father and your brother, and those stories that you shared line up with my grandfather's lifetime. You also have shared that ornament experience you had where you told me you played football. That lines up with his lifetime also. And so I just shared that with him. I didn't tell him, yes, you are, or no, you aren't. That's his experience to have, but made those connections. And then it was interesting a few years later, like many years later, actually, he asked me this, out of the blue, he's just like, Mom, do you want to, do you remember that story? Go ahead.
The one where I asked you about the lightning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, do you remember when our house got struck by lightning and it went right down the stairs and out the back door?
And I was like, no, I don't remember that. That didn't
How old
happen.
were you when you said that?
Maybe like 9. He was older,
Okay.
for sure.
I
Not.
say I was probably like 7.
Okay.
And
Somewhere.
that's a long time ago when
Yeah.
you're 13.
Yeah.
But so this was like you saw this in your
Yeah,
like you saw
I
this.
just remembered it. I was like,
Just remember it. Just a memory. Okay.
Just a memory. And so I'm like, no, I don't. But interesting enough, like, I remember when I was a child,
Right.
my mom had told us of this crazy story that my grandfather, when he was a kid, was sitting with his family and they saw, you know, lightning struck the house. The bolt of lightning went down the stairs and out the door. And my family, when we would visit, they would talk about it and how crazy that experience was. But it had been years ago, and I never had shared that story with Cam.
So Cam had never heard
He had
that
never heard that story. I mean, I hadn't even thought about it in like 20, 30 years. And so when he said that, I said, well, I don't remember this, but let's call my mom. Let's, you know, ask her, because my grandfather had that experience. And so sure enough, we call her and she's like, yep. And she tells us the story, and same story, like totally happened. And so these are the kinds of things, like that moment was, I don't know, for me, it was almost the proof that this experience happened. How does he know about this experience? Like, he could say, oh, I'm this person, I feel this way. But then when you have this experience that happened, you know, 50, 60, I don't know, 70 years ago, a long time ago, that's just wild to me. It blows me away, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Did you have any other experiences with these connections?
I had another one, but it was with a different one.
Oh, okay.
Like a different person.
A different past
what was
life.
that?
Yeah, he was like, I had a past life with like a famous person, like an historical figure.
Okay. And when how did that come to your awareness that you felt like?
Well, when I was like 6, I'd say, I just remembered being this famous person, right? And I became like more like interested in this historical figure.
Right.
And I wondered about him. And so
But before you even started researching him, you had
yeah.
told me he was sitting in the living room and he says, Mom, I was so-and-so in a past life. And I was like, well, tell me more about that.
and I was like, I remember I had a big house. And I had a horse. I really liked that horse. And I was in a very important war.
Yeah. And so I asked him, well, like, do you remember what you were fighting for? And he was like, yeah, it was really important. I don't remember the exact cause, but I know it was really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, and I just kind of asked some questions, and he answered a little bit more about details about the house and the time period that historical figure was alive. And then a couple of years later, maybe when you were like 9 or 10, he started to kind of wonder, okay,
I didn't really have any more past life experiences. I only had I just stopped having them really. There wasn't as much anymore. But then we went on vacation. And then you actually asked me. I asked you about that, and you said that I should ask the Mahanta for a past life experience. And later, we were on vacation, and we were at an old cemetery, and we found that we were looking at all the memorials and stuff, and I found one that I thought was really cool. I was like, this is the coolest one. I was like, I really like this one. And then I asked my mom to take a picture of it, and then we went up to see who it was, and to Google the name, and it was this historical figure's one of his most trusted friends, and is
Really?
yeah, he was best friends with him.
What are the chances of that,
I know,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, out of all the memorials
And all of Savannah,
world.
Georgia, which is where we were, and all the cemeteries and all the memorials there.
yeah.
I picked that one.
Do you remember what you liked about it? I mean,
I just saw it. I
There's
was
something
I really
about it?
like this one.
And it was very simple. It wasn't, the cemetery we were in, they had gorgeous tombstones and memorials. I mean, some of them are wings.
Like that,
Yeah.
Some of them are children holding things. There's just
the
giant ones.
Detailed is
So detailed. And then he
super
picks this super simple one. And I was like, why are you drawn to this one? Oh, it's just so cool. We have to take a picture. And so it was really neat. And I think that moment did something for you in that moment. You had made a connection. What was that connection?
I just I was I recognized that I wasn't just a physical being, that I was soul. And I had many past lives, and I'll have future ones too.
It's the soul adventure.
Yeah.
And knowing that, it helps take away the fear of death.
Yeah.
I know that's how it's been for me. Yeah. What made you go to Savannah, Georgia? Or is that just how did you guys?
We just love to travel, and my father actually lives in South Carolina, so we were in South Carolina visiting family, and then we did a few days trip.
Because she's never been to Savannah, Georgia, and we had to check it off.
Yeah, no, you and Dad, I had been, but you guys
Oh
hadn't.
yeah,
Now, you mentioned you checked in with
but you liked it.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
That's what.
Beautiful, beautiful city.
Good plug for Savannah,
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned you checked in with the Mahanta because, so as you got older, you stopped having these memories of past lives, and so your mom suggested to check in with the Mahanta. Who's the Mahanta? What's the role of the Mahanta? You want to share?
Do you want to answer that? Okay, I'll answer it. So, the Mahanta is our inner guide. It's that inner nudge that you hear when you're working throughout the day and you get a nudge to, call somebody. Oh, I have this nudge. I should call someone. Like you mentioned this woman who called her brother. Or this nudge to go do something. Or, for me, it's the highest state of consciousness that you can aspire to and you can reach towards in this lifetime of being able to tap into something and hear guidance that can help you in your life, in your everyday life. Mm-hmm. And so, we work with Mahanta every day because we recognize that, it's with us all the time. And we just have to tap into or ask for guidance, Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had lots of experiences with a Mahanta, a spiritual guide in ECKANKAR, which there's always an individual who serves in that role. Mm-hmm. He's Sri Harold Klemp, the spiritual leader of ECKANKAR. And I was so interested in past lives when I was younger. And having a guide helped me tap into the past lives that were most important for me today. Because from my own personal understanding and beliefs, and I feel this is completely real. It's just a natural fact of life. We've all had many, many, many lives. They're not all totally relevant to the life we had today. And when you discover these past lives, they offer some kind of lesson for us in what our mission is and what are we here to do in this lifetime? What's our purpose? Mm-hmm. Did you get any lessons from any of your past life memories of like, oh, maybe you got some insight about this life from having those? Now you mentioned being soul. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Or are you Crary as well?
Well, for me, I have, similar to you, I've asked the Mahanta to help me when I've had some conflicts in relationships. For some reason, I get a lot of
conflicts in relationships.
Yeah.
No,
can you imagine? That never happens, But it does. It's part of life. It's how we learn to grow is through relationships, and how to like become more loving beings. And so, I had a few things, few relationships in life where it didn't go the way I had planned or I'd wanted. And I would ask for guidance and to understand why the situation was happening the way it was. And so, I can share a story if you want me to.
Sure, please. Yeah.
So I had this one experience with a longtime friend. We were best friends from third grade all the way through college. And in our college years, we kind of started drifting apart. Just were interested in different things, starting to form different friendship groups. And I just am a very loyal person and love really deeply. And so I was really hurt by the fact that she was making choices that didn't include me always. And so I started to kind of drift apart and say, okay, well, I don't need this relationship as much as I thought I did. And, I moved, halfway across the country. Our lives just drifted apart. And then at one point, I got married and she was invited to it, but not in the wedding, which was very strange. And then she got married and I wasn't in the wedding, and that, was fine. It all made sense at the time. But the night before her wedding, I just got so sad. I just started crying that I wasn't there because neither of us actually went to each other's weddings. And I was crying. I was upset. And so I went to sleep and I just asked the Mahanta, I said, can you show me a dream to help me understand where this pain is really coming from? And so that night I have a dream and I'm walking down an aisle and I look down and I'm dressed in a suit and I'm a man. And I look at my friend and she's the bride and she's completely, dressed up in a gown, and I can hear the music playing. Everything's kind of black and white in the dream. And
this is the friend from this lifetime who you're recognizing as
correct.
The bride in
She's
that wedding.
The bride in that wedding. Okay. But I am a man, so I'm in a different body.
Okay.
And so I realize in the dream that we are married, that we just were married. And I wake up from the dream and I make this connection that this was a past life experience. This is a dream showing me a past life of my friend and I in a lifetime where we were married. And I loved her so much. I was so loyal to her, as you would be as a spouse to somebody. And in this lifetime, I was kind of expecting those same loyalties from her that you would have for a spouse. But she's just a friend in this lifetime. And in that moment of recognizing this past life, it dissolved like all the hurt and all the expectations that I had really created. And, easy to put blame on someone else, like, oh, they're doing this, this, and this, and that's why our friendship drifted. But in that moment, it was like, oh, actually, I'm responsible for this also. And a week later, after she had her honeymoon and everything, I called her. And I just said, I was so sad I missed your wedding. And I shared the dream with her. And, we used to share our dreams all the time when we were kids. And sometimes we'd even have like the same dream. Wow. It was really bizarre. It was so cool. Like that we would be inwardly having similar dreams. And so, we just reconnected on this. And when she shared that at her wedding, the only time she cried was when she saw my mom and realized I wasn't there. Oh. And so this connection was like remade, and we, are now very good friends. We're so grateful for our friendship, for like overcoming that part of our friendship, and to have like someone that we love so deeply we live very far away from each other, but our kids get to see each other, you know, when we come home every year. They're very close. They're like born a month apart. And just to see how a whole relationship can heal through one experience of remembering a past life. So to me, that's how they can help you, because they can give you understanding and guidance. I mean, maybe there's someone at work that you really just don't like. And you're like, why don't I like this person? You have no reason not to like them. It could be because of a past life, you know, that they did something or you did something that caused a friction and you're feeling that in this lifetime. Or maybe there's someone that you're super drawn to and you're just like immediate connection. You have this immediate connection to them. You know, for me, I've had that with many people, and it's like I'm recognizing an old friend that I haven't seen, you know, very happy to reconnect with.
That's such a great example of what we mean when we say working off karma. Oftentimes we think about physical actions, but it's really our attitudes that is the key piece on karma and reincarnation, is working off these attitudes that limit love. Because, you know, from the ECKANKAR perspective, the whole point is to learn how to love as God loves, this divine love. So, for example, you had that kind of love with your friend in a different lifetime, but you came to this spiritual growth of acceptance, just loving unconditionally and without needing.
Yeah, and it
that,
allows you to drop, like, if we're learning how to love as God loves, which is the goal, past lives can help you drop these, you know, negative emotions, or maybe they're not even just negative, just emotions in general that are attached to certain people when you have a realization like that. And then you don't have to carry that. I mean, I could have carried hurt with me the rest of my life. And instead, I get to now have this beautiful friendship and love with someone. You know, it's so amazing how these tools can help you really learn to be more loving.
Yeah. Have more compassion, because everyone's learning and getting their lessons in, making mistakes, while also doing wonderful things. And it's a balancing act through every lifetime.
Yeah.
You mentioned dreams. That, for me, has been a major source of past life recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too, Cam? Yeah. Do you remember your dreams?
Yeah, I remember most of them. I always remember them when I wake up, but sometimes if I just like go do something and I come back, I'm like, wait a minute. And then later on in the day, I'll remember it just randomly.
Yeah. Do you write down your dreams at all?
I usually forget to. I try to sometimes. But.
You know what I do? I've got a Sony recorder right here. I'm not recording right now, but I have this by the bed. I can just hit record, and I can record the dream and then listen in the morning. Of course, oftentimes it's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. What is he saying? But maybe, have you ever had a lucid dream where in the dream you're aware that you're in this dream?
Yeah, usually I am. Or it's like I'm actually like living a different life.
Wow.
Like it's either that I'm aware I'm in a dream or I am aware I'm in a dream, but it's like I'm living a different life. Like that dream is how life is usually.
That is so cool and interesting.
Or I don't even know that I'm in a dream and I'm just like living a different life.
Yeah. Well, as soul, we have these experiences in many dimensions.
Sometimes it's with the people from this lifetime.
Right, oftentimes.
Sometimes it's just like with like random people.
Yeah. And this seems very natural and very grounded. You know, you are Cam. It's not a distraction to this life here at all. And, you know, I think there's lessons in dreams too, just like there's lessons in this life.
Yeah.
And this, you know, there's the waking dream in this life too, that concept of what are the lessons? What's the symbology of what's happening in our daily life that's trying to give us a lesson?
Right, yeah.
So, you know, in this article in the Washington Post, you know, the parents were oftentimes pretty thrown by these experiences, upset. It didn't fit whatever their spiritual teaching was or religion. And then there was also sometimes past lives aren't all pleasant past lives. There can be some pretty rugged experiences and deep waters. And, children have nightmares oftentimes. So in the ECK teachings, one of the things well, you just pointed at Cam.
I did. Yeah, he's had a lot of nightmares when he was a kid.
When I was little. Yeah.
How did you work with those?
Well, he would just wake up and he'd also be afraid to go to sleep because of the nightmares. And so we would sing Hugh before he'd go to sleep.
Do you want to share a little bit about Hugh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Hugh it's an ancient name for God. It's been sung through many different cultures and religious paths. But it's an ancient name for God. And when you sing it, it's like this lullaby. And so we would sing it every night because for me, it also helps remind me of my highest self, a soul. And like Cam said, recognizing these past lives helped him realize that he's soul. He's not just this physical body, not just Cam, like we are eternal beings and we exist because of God's love for us. And so when I sing the Hugh, it just aligns me with that higher knowingness. And it can help set your intentions to the highest. So we would sing that before he goes to sleep to just like try to help bring ourselves into that space of love, of God's love. And then we would do a spiritual exercise where he actually created a spiritual exercise.
Yeah.
So
It's actually in the book that you made.
It is now in.
And it got published in a book.
It is.
I made it.
Well, we want to hear about that. We want to hear that spiritual exercise. But I don't know if you want to share more about working with the nightmares, or maybe what was your experience with singing Hugh, and how did that work? Did it help you with the nightmares, or what happened?
Well, at one point I was like I had this whale on my wall that had his eyes was just like staring at me, and I was little, so it was like kind of scary, right? Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't before. But then I had like a nightmare about it once, and then the next day I told my mom that it was kind of creepy for me, and then she's like, well, why don't we do a spiritual exercise to help you with this and help you find like a safe place, and also help you like the whale, right?
Release your fear.
Yeah, help you like stop your fear of the whale. And then so we made this spiritual exercise where we would like take the whale like on the ocean off to like an island where you could have like whatever, and you'd have like a thing guarded by like a spiritual, like a
temple.
Like a temple, whatever kind you want, but guard. And there was Eckmasters all over the place, and you could have all the things you wanted in it, but only things that were love were allowed in. Like, love.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's in the book that she like
A similar version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the book?
So there's a book called The Wonder Within You, and it's a book
that she put together.
Well, I compiled it. There's these exercises that
He's proud of his
he's
mom.
very proud. Yeah.
She compiled it.
She did.
Just putting it together.
Yeah, and so and it's a book full of spiritual exercises for like teens, youth and teens, and
I actually used one last night.
And this particular, you did, and this particular one is about creating your own spiritual exercise. So it's based off of the one that Cameron created.
And it has a whale on it.
Yeah.
And I love whales.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What exercise did you do last night?
I did one about past lives, actually.
You did? And what was it? What was the exercise?
It was like I can't remember what it's called, but you sang mana.
M-A-N-A, right?
Yeah. And then you imagine yourself somewhere with, you imagine yourself on the causal plane with like an orange sky.
A causal plane, okay.
With an orange sky. And then there's the Mahanta there, and he brings you to like a storage of memories, and it can look like whatever you think it looks like. And for me, it was like orbs.
Orbs?
Wow.
Oh, that's
with
very...
like pictures of things, and it was like, and he would give you like pictures or memories of like people, and you look through them, and then you like focus on, and you like concentrate, and you focus on some of them that like you recognize, right? And then when you're going to bed, you then ask the Mahanta to tell you about the pictures and stuff.
Great.
So that's the one I did last night.
Wow, that's an awesome exercise. And I think sometimes then you have a dream experience, a soul travel experience that illuminates that more.
Yeah, I can't remember my dream from last night right now, but I could this morning.
Yeah, they fade real quick. If you don't catch them,
Yeah,
I'll probably remember it later.
well, you're good.
I have to write mine down too.
Yeah.
I do the similar, but I put it in a phone and I just talk in it.
Use your phone voice.
And it,
recording.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah, just for the listeners, your mana is a charged word, a mantra, if you will, that tunes you into the causal plane. So there's these dimensions of life. There's the physical world and then the astral
It's
plane.
the one of memories.
Yeah, that's the one for memories, causal plane, and it has the color orange is associated with it. So you're kind of putting yourself in vibratory alignment with that inner dimension where these past life memories can be accessed. And you learn more about cause and effect because that's the law of karma. You're learning how to create the causes that are most positive and growth oriented. And you get to experience the effects of being cause.
yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you also put into practice, there are spiritual exercises and there's travel. Travel is, you make it a spiritual exercise. You have a spiritual intention to go someplace and learn more, and you may get clues to past lives. You all went to Japan recently.
Yeah, we did.
Now, how did you end up picking Japan? Not everyone goes, that's a
True
very
story.
cool place to go.
Yeah.
Because I like it.
Cam was
like it.
really drawn to it. Yeah. Yeah.
And did you like it when you got there?
It was amazing.
It was?
It was.
Yeah.
Everything about it was amazing.
That is wonderful.
Tell them what you said pretty much every single day.
I said, Mom, could we just move here?
You want to move to Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the language? Could you just
Well, I mean, there were some words that I knew because, like, you need to know some. But most people spoke at least a little bit of English.
That is wonderful of them.
Yeah, there's like
A lot of people in other countries are very nice to speak
Yes,
English
they are.
to
They are.
us Americans
And
who
they
we're
are.
speaking to a worldwide audience right
yeah.
now.
There's like a I think it's called the JETS program there.
The what program? Jets?
I don't know exactly what it's called, but we had someone from Japan actually visit us shortly afterward when I got to school, and she said that most places in most schools you have to learn a couple languages, and one of them is English.
In Japan, they have to learn. Yeah.
And so we go up to someone and be like, "Sumimasen," which is excuse me, and we'd be like, "Do you speak any English?" And we'd be like, "A little bit, yeah."
That's sweet.
It was cool actually when we were there because he was so comfortable. Like such a foreign country. Like really, the food's different, the people are different, the culture's different, the beds are different. Everything is different. And we just fell in love. I mean, the people there are the nicest people and they're so helpful and they're so service oriented. They want to help you in whatever way they can. And so we just fell in love. But Cam he was the one who chose Japan out of all the places, that he felt very strongly about going there.
Because it has it's got like the most modern stuff for like tech. Because I want to do engineering, and it's also got like very like old and like ancestral stuff, which is also kind of cool, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like a mix.
Ancient
like
traditions.
when we were there, there'd be like a bunch of skyscrapers, and then there'd just be like a shrine that was like a huge park that was just like a shrine.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Has the best of all worlds.
It does.
And the funny thing was, there was a Family Mart everywhere.
A family what?
A Family Mart. Like
Family Mart.
It's like a convenience store.
yeah.
Like you're walking.
Run by families.
You're walking. You're walking like this. There's a Family Mart here, and then you're walking up. You take a right. There's another Family Mart.
What did you like about that?
Well, it's just funny that they're everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Like
He likes the food.
Yeah, the food was excellent.
Yeah.
They had really good hash browns and really good,
Which is not Japanese at all.
and really good like meatball sticks.
Okay.
So good.
Well,
There's like 3 meatballs
You didn't
on a
eat
stick.
fish and
So
sushi and
delicious.
stuff?
Oh, their sushi was amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet it was.
We went to a rotating sushi place, and we got, and my favorite one, I know I'm not supposed to eat cheese, but my mom let me. I got so it had rice, and it had salmon on top, like raw salmon, and then it had cheese melted on top. It was delicious.
It's the Japanese version of a cheeseburger.
Totally, yeah. I will say, though, that the...
And then there was, like, a squid one, too.
Yeah. Okay, I will say that one of the things that I recognized, because he's so young and had this major connection when he was there, it was, for me, I thought, well, gosh, he must have had a past life here, because he's so drawn to, like, that culture, that lifetime, like ninjas. We went to a ninja samurai museum, and it was just like, he was fascinated by it. And so at one point we were there and I did a spiritual exercise. We were actually out by a waterfall and we sang Hugh and did a spiritual exercise. And I had this experience where I saw the two of us, because the other thing that was happening when we were in Japan, it was just him and I, my husband and daughter stayed home, and he and I were kind of having some moments of like brotherly, sisterly bickering, where like I'd say something and he'd say something. I mean, it wasn't really like we weren't fighting, but it was just like a little thing back and forth. And I'm like, what is this? And so then I have this experience where we're like working in a field in Japan, and we are a brother and a sister of this family, and like we're in disguise, but this is where we live and we work the fields together. And in that lifetime, we were just the best of friends. And that was the experience we had when we were in Japan. We just had this super cool bonding of being just such great friends. I mean, he was teaching me things that, that I, like, he was being the teacher, and I was learning from him and vice versa. So
Sounds like it was a great trip.
yeah, it's cool just to
I'm
see
definitely going back at some point.
Okay.
and it's cool to see where past lives can just like appear like when you travel, like you can just have things, that like one time I was in Amsterdam and I never had been to Amsterdam in my life, but I knew where I had to go. I knew all the road systems. I didn't have a map. I just knew where everything was. And I was like, how do I know where everything is? It's so bizarre.
It does explain things. I mean, child prodigies.
Right.
I mean, we know about Mozart. Also, you go on YouTube, you see these 2 or 3 year olds playing incredible music.
I mean,
Or like a 7-year-old doing a quad backflip on a tramp.
Okay.
Lean.
Wow. Well, Cam's into parkour.
Yeah.
But like there's
gymnastics.
these 7-year-olds who just like are crazy at gymnastics. They're so good, and like they do stuff that adults can't do.
I hear you. I want to talk about, it's like we live in this world that's got infinite possibilities. And I think a lot of people, when they're kids,
They're more connected to their like past lives because it's closer in time, right?
well, I agree totally. And also, when I was a kid, I was like, okay, here's the Earth, there's the stars, space, outer space. But where does outer space end?
Yeah, I still think about that.
And I would imagine a wall, because it had to end somewhere, right? But what's on the other side of the wall? And then
I think it's just like numbers.
it's just like numbers.
It
Tell me
goes
more
on
about
forever. And
Right.
I mean, in numbers, there's like, just like in space, there is a limit that we can count to, but it still goes on forever.
that. Absolutely. Because your mom said you had like a reverie about this.
Yeah.
You want to share what? Maybe
Yeah.
Cam will remember that.
Can
don't
I
know.
share that, Cam? Just a little bit about it?
Sure.
Okay. So we were going for a walk and he kind of looked at the moon. He was just like, it's really about soul and how it's eternal. And so he's like, Mom, are you ever exhausted by the fact that like it just keeps going? And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, that like we don't ever die. Like soul just keeps on having one lifetime after another. And then in ECKANKAR, we believe once you've really worked off your karma, that you can actually not come back to earth and you can, reincarnate into other inner worlds and have more experiences. And it does keep going. There's never we're eternal beings. That is everlasting, And so I was like, yeah, I agree. It does kind of seem like it could be exhausting. But if you think about it, it's like we've got here in the physical world all these fun things to do. Like we could go to Disney World and ride all the rides at Disney World. And then, a year later, we go to Universal and ride all the rides at Universal. There's like hundreds of countries to visit and hundreds of cultures to visit. So in all these
But we
lifetimes,
can't do that all, and we have all those experiences, but we can't do that all in one life.
we can't do it all in one lifetime, right? So it's like you have all these lifetimes so that you can have a whole variety of experiences. But then once you've evolved past the physical, then you get to move into another world where maybe now you're exploring all these museums, like in the causal plane where there's memories and museums and things like that. So it's like on each level that we graduate to, we're expanding in consciousness and learning more about love and becoming more like vibrating, like positive, loving beings, And so in that way, it sounds fun because it's like there's always another adventure to take,
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose of our show, the series. And on that note, thank you both for being such positive beings of love. Thank you for being who you are and sharing your stories of love and learning.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
It's been so fun to share with you and with Cam.
Yeah. Thank you, Cam, for sharing. It's really, really cool. And so if you want to pursue your adventure, check out the show notes. We'll give you some resources that you may want to pursue. And happy adventuring on your soul adventure. Take care.